So in addition to this YouTube channel, I also have this podcast. It's called SaaS and Scotch. It's super awesome. I'll link to it below. You don't have to go right now. But on that podcast, I interview founders just like you that are actively going through the Shawshank crawl to the next stage of growth, to product market fit. Now, one of the things that's been really cool is I've been interviewing some second-time founders. In fact, a lot of them. A lot of second-time founders that are doing it again. They've had success before. They're building another SaaS business. And one thing that always sticks out is second-time founders absolutely obsess not as much about product, although that's important, but about distribution and go-to-market. That's the big thing you learn, and that's true just for me as well. When I think about building a new SaaS business, when I coach my go-to-market coaching program clients, I'm like, look, you gotta obsess about go-to-market and distribution, because if you get that right, you'll get enough attention in the market and you'll be able to figure out the product and make it great. You'll get there. So in this episode, I wanna dig more into what a go-to-market strategy actually looks like. In this channel, I've done countless videos on go-to-market strategy, focusing on specific components. But I wanna kind of zoom out and talk about, if you were to obsess about distribution and go-to-market strategy, what does that look like? What does the big picture look like on how the pieces come together? So in this episode, I'm gonna walk you through those 3 key pieces that fit together into a go-to-market strategy example that's gonna be applicable to 99.9% of B2B SaaS businesses out there. So that's what we're gonna do. Intro. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unstoppable. I'm TK, and on this channel, I help SaaS founders like you grow your SaaS businesses faster with an unstoppable strategy. If you are new to this channel, welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and that bell icon. That way you'll get notified every single time I drop an episode with the TK energy. Now, if you are already part of this channel, if you're part of my SaaS go-to-market coaching program, where I give you a step-by-step process to actually build a go-to-market strategy, welcome back. It's so awesome to see you guys over here. Now, when it comes to building and scaling SaaS businesses, distribution and having a go-to-market strategy is king. I'll give you an example. I get hit up nearly every other week by a founder that is building in the sales engagement space. Now, this is relevant because I started ToutApp. ToutApp was my last SaaS business. We started back in 2011, we grew it out, then we sold to Marketo. We were one of the OGs in the sales engagement space back when we didn't even call it sales engagement. We were creating that category. We created that category. So nowadays, there's clear winners in the space, including SalesLoft and Outreach that are out there. They'll probably IPO at some point. But there's also a long tail of other tools that are trying to displace them. You have Mixmax, you have Apollo, you have Mailshake, you have Lemlist, and then on top of that, you have new founders that are coming into the space seemingly every other week. So it's a very crowded space. It's expected to be nearly a $5 billion category. So there's room for multiple players, but it begs the question, how are the new guys ever gonna win? Now, what I noticed is there are people that are winning in the space that don't have the best product, but actually have killer go-to-market strategies. They have killer distribution. In fact, like, I go into a lot of these tools because in my coaching program, go-to-market coaching program, we actually help you pick the right tech stack to build out your go-to-market strategy and mobilize it. So I check out a lot of these outbound tools because we teach you how to do outbound effectively. And I always check out the new platforms. When a new founder hits me up, I always check out what they're doing, as long as I can sign up for a trial. And what's amazing to me is in a lot of cases, it's not the best product that's winning in the market, it's the ones with the best distribution. The rest of them are kind of stuck at anywhere between 5 and 15 million ARR. The rest, they're just stuck and they're not quite growing, they're not quite moving. But the people that are really nailing distribution, go-to-market strategy are winning, and they don't even have the full product. But this is important to understand because the ones that are winning will actually generate more cash. They'll actually have more growth. They'll be able to raise more. They'll be able to reinvest that cash. And then the product is going to actually leap ahead. Whereas the other way around, you can have the best product, but you'll keep spending money on the best product. But if no one finds out, then you'll never grow. You see the difference? This is why a go-to-market strategy is super important. Now, in this channel, I've talked about go-to-market strategy in a lot of different specific ways. I'll point out some of those videos as we go through the example, but I wanted to zoom out and just break it down to like, what does it look like when you actually have a successful go-to-market strategy that's differentiated and helps you win? So if you're excited to dig in, I'm gonna walk you through the 3 key components of it. If you're excited to dig in, go ahead and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's go to principle number 1. Principle number 1, or the first part of your go-to-market strategy, is you need to actually have deep customer insights. You need to have some macro trends, and you need to codify it into an ideal customer profile. There's a reason I'm phrasing this differently. I actually redid this card a couple of times because I didn't want to just say you need to have an ideal customer profile. Because if you've been a long-time follower of my channel, or you probably have some sort of an ideal customer profile. But if you're inside my go-to-market coaching program, you do it totally differently, because we teach you what are the other things that really matters beyond an ideal customer profile. You need to have deep customer insights. You need to understand what's going on in their world. You need to understand what are the big macro trends that are happening. You need to understand what is the alternative to your product that they would be using if they weren't using you. You need to understand what's on stake. This is what I call deep customer insights. And if you have these deep customer insights, those are the beginnings of a go-to-market strategy, because that will help you actually craft everything else that comes after. And a lot of times, first of all, in the early stages, founders tend to over-index on product and not think about go-to-market. And when they do go-to-market, they tend to over-execute on execution instead of these strategic things. Let's send off 1,000 emails, right? Let's run $1,000 worth of ads. Instead of thinking about, well, what are the deep customer insights? How are we different? What are the macro trends? How do we codify that into the ICP? This is what the first piece of a go-to-market strategy is. You actually have to ask yourself these questions. If you want to dig more into how to actually really craft an ICP, 3 things you didn't know about an ICP, I did a video that goes into some of the highlights. You can check that out here. You don't have to go right now. I'll link to it below, but I did a whole ICP video that you can learn more about it as well. So that's principle number 1 in your go-to-market strategy example, is you need to have the deep customer insights. That's how you craft that strategy. And if you don't have that, you just jump to execution, it won't really work. So that's the first one. The second thing that you have to figure out is to send out 1,000 emails. No, just kidding. I'm totally joking. That's not what you need to be doing. You're like so far away from that. Like, the second thing you really need to figure out once you have these insights is thinking about, what is the positioning of your product? What is the value proposition of your product? How do you actually message this value proposition and the positioning in the market so you can differentiate yourself? And how do you craft that into an actual strategic narrative? This is a bunch of stuff over here, but this is really what you need to have. Because if you don't do the hard work on these pieces, crafting that email, crafting that ad, writing that LinkedIn post, whatever you're doing to get attention, it's going to be out of nowhere, and you won't be able to differentiate. If you are truly the 12th sales engagement tool in the market, then you need to actually spend a lot of time on this, for example, to really differentiate. Because otherwise, it's like, yep, we help you send 1,000 emails also, except what, we're $2? I'm like, look, if I'm going to send out 1,000 emails, I want to pay a sufficient amount of money. I want to go for the premium provider, make sure my domain reputation is protected, make sure my list is warmed, make sure I'm doing all the things in the right way, right? Like, I would want to spend money on that because there's lots on the line. My pipeline is on the line. So you need to actually figure out, well, how do we differentiate in a very crowded market? It's always a crowded market. Let's just say you're not doing sales engagement. Let's say you're going into a brand new category. No one else is doing it. Well, guess what? Your biggest competitor is just as bad as the sales engagement space. Like, in the sales engagement space, it's 12 other tools. Your competitor in this brand new category is apathy. It's that spreadsheet. It's doing nothing. And so just as much effort needs to go into actually thinking through your positioning, your value prop, your messaging, your narrative, all those core pieces. If you want to think more or double click more into this and what are the different things to think about, some principles to consider, check out this video where I go into the value proposition canvas. It's a tool that's pretty cool to help you start to think about your value proposition. It's one part of this, but in all these other pieces, but it's an important place to start if you want to start to think through those pieces. You don't have to go right now. I'll link to it below. Now, before I go into the third one, let me just pause here for a second. If you're starting to get some aha moments here of the difference between execution and strategy and why distribution is so important in the market that you're in, if you're starting to see the power in this, can I just get a yes in the comments below? Also, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It really likes it when you do that. Now, also, if you're thinking about how to craft these pieces, it's perfectly normal if you're like, man, that's a lot of pieces. How many YouTube videos do I need to watch? Like, how many other places do I need to go for advice? This is slightly different than what I was told. And for my mentors and my, like, if your head's spinning a little bit, don't worry. This is exactly why I created my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. We actually dig into these pieces and give you a step-by-step framework to follow. I'll tell you more about it at the end of this video, but let's go to principle number 3 right now. And also, if you haven't smashed that like button, please do so. It just means the world to us. Okay, principle number 3 is once you have your deep customer insights, right? And then you have your positioning and your messaging, which you develop from these deep customer insights. Once you have that, then it's about delivering a consistent set of marketing and sales activities. I call this a Broadway show. So what ends up happening is, if you don't have the strategy in place, if you don't have the deep customer insights and the messaging and positioning, all those pieces, and you start doing marketing and sales, you're like, let's just put in $1,000 on ads, and let's, like, I don't know, do SEO, and let's do this, and let's do that. And you're all over the place, and you're making stuff up every week, and you're not tethered to a strategy. And therefore, you won't know what to iterate on. If something's not working, you won't know what to tweak. You'll be in the middle of nowhere. But if you actually run a consistent set of activities every week, then you can measure those, you can iterate on those, and you can actually drive what I call a Broadway show. Now, it turns out if you're in SaaS, if you're in B2B SaaS, there are 6 key ways that you can actually generate demand. Once you have your messaging and your positioning and from the customer insight, once you have all that, if you want to dig into those 6 key ways of driving demand, you can check out this video. You don't have to go right now. I'll link to it below. Those are the 6 key channels that you can think about, from easy to hard, and there's some things to consider on that. You can check that out. But what you need to be doing is focusing on the key channels and being consistent on those channels, because it takes time. That's one of the biggest things about B2B SaaS. It's not an overnight thing. Sometimes people will do it. They're like, oh, we went on Product Hunt and did a lifetime deal, and now we have 100 customers. I'm like, great. Now you have 100 customers for life and no recurring revenue. Like, what do we do now? What have we learned from this? I don't know. So it's super important to actually be building scalable go-to-market machines where you are actually scaling up channels one at a time, honing in on the messaging, doubling down on the messaging that's working, and you scale it, but it takes a little bit of time. When you do it that way, it compounds just like your recurring revenue, and then it turns a curve and it starts to scale really quickly. That's the power of SaaS, and it takes a little bit of time, but in the long run, it compounds and accelerates, which is the power. That's why these are so amazing. So you can check out that video for the 6 key channels, but what's more important is the third principle, which is you need to have this consistent set of marketing and sales activities. When you do these 3 things, number 1, get the deep customer insights. Number 2, actually flesh out your positioning, your value prop, your messaging, your narrative, and then you feed into your consistent set of marketing and sales activities. When you do those 3 things stacked up, that's when you actually have a go-to-market strategy and then a go-to-market machine that you can scale, you can iterate on, you can tweak, and you're tethered to it. And that's when you actually start to accelerate growth. That's the power of it. So that's what I had for you today. Now, if you are in the midst of all this and you're figuring all these pieces out, you're figuring out how do I get the customer insights, how do I figure out my macro trends, how do I craft it into my ICP, how do I actually create my strategic narrative, my messaging, how do I actually feed that into a consistent set of marketing and sales activities, this is exactly why I created my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. Inside of this coaching program, we help you actually develop your ICP the right way. We help you flesh out your manifesto and craft it, and then we help you run a Broadway show. We teach you how to do each of these key pieces step by step. Now, what's the difference between watching all of my YouTube videos versus joining the program? All my YouTube videos will talk about these core principles. Like, the most I can do in a 10 to 15 minute period is get you to realize what's out there, what's possible, what the core principles are, right? Now, in the coaching program, it's about quickest path to results. It's about actual coaching. So you actually get step-by-step videos on do this, and then do this, and then do this. It's an actual framework to follow. When you have a framework to follow, it reduces execution risk. Also, you get to get my coaching. We can look at what you're working on, and I can coach you through the process because I've been there before. Between those 2 things, between the step-by-step training plus the coaching, you can execute on these key pieces 10 times faster and get results faster. That's the whole point of the coaching program. So if you're in the stage where you're figuring these key pieces out, and you're realizing, look, I need to have my go-to-market strategy laid out, we need a framework to follow, we need to execute, we need to grow faster, then I invite you to apply to join my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. It's super simple. Just go to tkcater.com/GTM. tkcater.com/GTM. Go over there, you'll get all the details around the program. You can hit the little application button and we'll get on a call once you fill out the application. We'll get on a call, we'll talk through where you are in your business, what your goals are, and if I feel like I can help, we'll get you into the program. It's as simple as that. And most of all, we'll actually talk about where your business is at, and they'll help us understand, well, are there choke points? What are the optimizations? What could we do? Like, it gives us an opportunity to understand where you are and what might be holding you back. So it's super powerful. So just go to tkcater.com/GTM and you can get access to applying for the program, and we can get on a call and we can figure out how to get you in and get you building your go-to-market strategy and your go-to-market machine. Lastly, if you got value from this video, please smash that like button if you haven't already for the YouTube algorithm. Also, comment below with any questions you have about go-to-market strategy and the example that I gave. If you have questions, just post them below. I reply to every single comment. If you have a fellow founder or a team member that would get value from this video, please share this video with them. It will mean the world to us. If you haven't subscribed, we drop an episode like this 2 to 3 times a week. So be sure to hit the subscribe button and that bell icon. I'll link to the videos I mentioned down below so you can check those out as well. I'll link to the coaching program down below so you can apply there. And lastly, remember, everyone needs a strategy for their life and their business. When you are with us, yours is going to be unstoppable. I'm TK. I'll see you in the next episode.